Artist Enough is an interview series in which we talk about journey of becoming an artist and successes and struggles of being one. In the first episode, Cecilia Fox interviews Lola Diaz Cantoni, who's originally from Argentina and currently works as a freelance artist and organizer in Groningen, Netherlands. Her work is in the intersection of conceptual, socially engaged and performance art. She creates actions that act as an invitation for people to take time to connect with themselves. In 2022, she was awarded with Mondriaan Fund's Artist Start Grant. So welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
As my first question, I wanted to ask, what is your association with the word artist, and how comfortable do you feel calling yourself artist, or when was the moment in your life that you felt more comfortable calling yourself artist?
Associations with the word art. I think there is something magical about it. Something of a certain sensibility or attention, creativity. That people that work within art can, through art, share their perspectives and views on the world or how they experience the world. With the word artist,
sometimes I feel like that the word artist puts a lot of pressure on you, or it can also be very triggering word, or there is some expectations in a way.
So I experienced, actually, I was a bit thinking about it a few weeks back because I was doing a residency in Sweden, and I arrived in a place where people were living and they knew I would come. And then when I arrived, they were like, "Oh, you are the artist." and this happened to me several times, a few days. And then I felt like, yeah, I work in art and I study the art, but when people call me, "You are the artist," I feel there is some sort of hierarchy or distance, and I don't feel that distance with people. I feel we are all artists or we do all our art in a certain way, even if you're a cook or a gardener or a mother or a bus driver, So that felt a bit uncomfortable because I felt I was somehow distant from them, but I wanted to be close to them and work and get to know them. But then if you put it really factually, yeah, I did study art. I am trained as an artist. I do art. But yeah, I've been busy quite long, or at some point I was quite fixated, oh, what kind of artist I am, or with the word curator or museums, all of this terminology, that I feel there is such a baggage and history that when someone asks you, "Oh, what do you do?" I studied art, I'm an artist. So what do you do? Do you paint? Do you sculpt? This is the first reactions. And then I'm like, yeah, actually I work with food and with people. Oh, how interesting. It's completely different. So, and I decided to a bit let go of these kind of labels and just do my thing and what I'm interested in. If this is within art, it is, but not. Sometimes I also feel that when you mention this idea of art, so especially with people that are not necessarily within the art world, they can be a bit off-putting, or it can be a bit, again, creating this distance, and this is something I don't want. So if what I'm doing is within art and can work in a context, good, but if it's not necessarily adding to it, then I'm not so interested in still making it clear that.
Yeah, in one of the interview that I read about you, I think it was also really beautiful how you were talking about that you feel that art should be for everybody and not just all these fancy art people. And I think in your artistic practice, you also really wanna create these experiences for the people and really bring people together. And it's also if you would have to describe your art practice with one word, what you would say your art practice is rooted in. It could be emotion or activity, or it could be something very totally different also.
I think it's about togetherness. And yeah, I also was thinking collectivity, but I also feel they're very connected or related. but togetherness. Like I feel there's everything I do for sharing it and for having like as a starting of a dialogue or for of an experience. So if I only produce, but that thing I make or share or express doesn't have like a relation to another person, then I don't see a lot of point, or I don't get excited of just making and or producing without anyone being involved or experiencing it or having like a connection or a dialogue.
And also, maybe I would like to talk a bit about like the studies and
Mm-hmm.
how important for you. How important do you think it's to like study art, or like could you be also like artist without studying? And in general, how were the like art studies for you? Like, or and because I also think like now you're looking at back at them, like when you are in your art studies, you have totally different experience when you look back to it. So how do you like look back at your art studies? Is there something that you wished was different, and what was the most valuable thing about your art studies?
Well, I definitely think they were very, very valuable and enriching. And I mean, during my studies, I met so many people that are still friends, colleagues, teachers, people. So I do not, I do not think that you need to study to be an artist. Um, I felt an artist before studying,
Mm-hmm.
or I was interested in certain elements that were very clear for me. And throughout the studies, I had the time to explore these elements or ideas or mediums. Like um, when I was living in Argentina, and then I decided to study art in Europe. So that's why I came, and a few years later I started in Minerva. um, Before, my idea of art was very different, and it was about aesthetics, it was about yeah creativity and sensibility. And throughout Minerva I got exposed to different mediums and artists and ways of actually doing and experiencing art. And very soon I started really bringing together who I was and who I am, and my skills, my strengths, my interests into my practice. So it was not like I started doing really traditional in a way, like painting, sculpture, photography, collage. But then immediately from the beginning of my studies, or after my first year, I was working with people doing performance, video, more happening experience based works. And throughout my studies I met people that really challenged me. And uh, yeah, you meet all kinds of people, but I also very cherish the amount of freedom that this particular academy gave me. Because when you graduate, there's no one behind you saying, oh, remember to update your website, or remember to keep on going to openings, because that's how you keep up your network. Or I mean, for everyone is different, but I feel the academy gives you some sort of framework, and it's a bit of a playground, of a fertile ground for you to grow and to explore who you want to be. And if there's something I regret is or maybe not regret because it's not on my power, but I think like 4 years at least in the Netherlands, which is how long the studies last, is really short. Because when you are kind of finding what are you interested in, or what you're good at, or what are your interests or strengths, then you have to write your thesis, and then you graduate it and are out. So of course, like, you can keep on learning from peers and friends, or self-study, going for to exhibitions, talking to people. But yeah, like, in a way, we are constant learners, and growing, and also the importance of keep on doing. In the academy, something that was really good is that you had this, or I found it very helpful for me, that there was this structure, and that you had regular talks with your classmates, with your tutors. And for that, you kind of created. I was very prolific, I was very explorative, and I really devoted time to creation, even if there were triads, experiments, etc. And also these like conversations and feedback with students and me, my colleagues, that now when you're not in art school, you really have to create those situations yourself. And I'm part of a studio with like 12 artists, and I like that very much, of this space that I come to work, but maybe a colleague of mine is working on something and we talk a bit about it, or I share what I'm working on, or we have a cup of coffee and we talk about the things we saw in the weekend. So this kind of constant dialogue among each other, because we all struggle, we all have to do our taxes at the end of the semester, or whatever. Um, but I feel it's better, and it feels better, good, when you know that the other person is also not that not but like to support each other. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree that the most valuable thing about art academy is really like the connections that you make there. And I think oftentimes we don't like value that enough, because sometimes art education can feel also very like competitive, and like you're really, sometimes people are too focused on the grades and you don't value all the connections that you make, but actually this is something that matters afterwards. um, I think you also slightly mentioned that you felt that you are an artist before you even went to art academy, and that was also like kind of my question, like when was this moment? Because I think for somebody it can be like, I don't know, when they sell their first work. For somebody it's like something really deeper inside of them, and I this is really something that I want to ask many people to get many perspectives on. So when was this moment for you that you felt like this, knowing that art is really something for you?
I have to think of it.
Was it in a like childhood,
Yeah,
or
yeah. I think I like, if I look back into my life and upbringing, I've been very supported and stimulated into art, and
Mhm,
my parents always took me to see theater plays and
mhm,
live music and puppet shows, and I would go with my mom to take painting lessons, and so this has been always something that I grew up with.
mhm,
And I think also it's so important, the support from your family, and also from food. Like if I think about both my parents, really always made nice meals. Like they made also always the best they could, and
mhm,
creatively, and with a lot of love and happiness. And if I look back a bit, during my teenage years, along my studies, I was always doing choir, theater, drama, and I even at some point I was doing drama,
mhm,
which is like a mixture of theater, dance, and
mhm,
choir,
mhm,
singing. And I was given the main role of a person
mhm,
who was a girl that wanted to become an artist, but she lived like in the outskirts of America,
mhm.
and she wanted to go to Nevada to study art. And then I had to make this a song about like, soy un artista, I am an artist. And then like, yeah, like I think it's just had to think about it. But it just felt like that. And like artists as a way of living, like expressing, and like an artist not only in creating art, but artists in like as a, yeah, like as a way of being, and
Mhm,
as a way of being open and attentive and creative and curious, playful. And then everyone can put those qualities in different fields or in different actions. But to me, there's no other way of being, or I couldn't imagine myself. I mean, yeah, I could imagine me being like an actress, so that would be
mhm.
my second profession or something. If I wouldn't, I mean, I could maybe become a bit more like that, or singer, but it's all connected to the culture and the arts. So to me, that's very rooted, I feel. So there was not a very moment where I, or a clear maybe like milestone where I felt like, oh, this gave me, because maybe you also mentioned something about, I think related to the art school, about recognition, or like value, like when
Or being competitive, because like in art
yeah.
school you're always like graded, so then oftentimes I think you can also feel like, oh, like I'm not artist enough if I got like 6 or a 7, or like I think like in a like a art school there is this like scale of like enoughness in a way sometimes.
Yeah, to me it was, or maybe, yeah, like I don't relate too much to that.
But
I could not connect this idea of artist enough in terms of grades, because I think grades in art school are ridiculous. I feel it's just connected to general ways that educational institutions work, that of course there are tests and of course there are grades, but in art school doesn't make any sense. It should be about, did you do your work, or were you here, were you engaged? Okay, then you can continue. If you were not, then yeah, i'm not giving I'm not doing this for the teacher, I'm doing it for myself. But this idea of, am I artist enough, I think this is something that in general we're constantly, or I am constantly, more or less asking myself. Like sometimes when something does not necessarily fit in what we in general experience or as seeing as art, then it's like, oh, I'm an artist enough. Or if I don't get a grant, I've been working for 3 months, then I'm like, damn it, like they didn't think I was artist enough. Or, but it's not, I always try to think of like, well, it was not only about the quality. I mean, you're also,
it's also about the journey of the artist itself, and I think that sometimes like as an artist you really kind of have to know that you do things for yourself in a way, or like there is this tension between like understanding that you're doing things for yourself, or like that you do things for like I don't know, getting like a grant or being in exhibition or some kind of getting for approval or something, and then you can also maybe get lost in it or something. But I
yeah.
think like you talk in a really healthy way that you were like very sure of like being artist like already before studies, and that you really felt like comfortable in it. um, and I think my next question is like, when have you like experienced like a success as an artist? Like it could be example of an artwork, it could be like event that happened, or something that you would consider like a success. Like it doesn't even have to be success in a like a classical sense that, oh, you got the award or something, but what means like artistic success for you personally?
Well, three things came to mind. I think, well, I feel very, very grateful, and I think big success has been to be awarded this Mondriaan funds. That is a grant that in the Netherlands, after you graduate from art school, you have 4 years or 3 years to apply to kind of support and boost your career. So that's something I've been working for during 3 months last year, and then I got it, and that has given me a lot of time and space to kind of go back to my practice and rethink what is really what I find important at this moment. The second is a project I made with Jorin in 2020, together with Laurin Weyers and Artist Book, and it's called Tomorrow's Language. And it was a project that we did together during, or we kind of started it just before the pandemic started, but then we wanted to continue doing it. And we really rethought the way that how could we create an exhibition when our art space was closed. So then we created an exhibition behind people's windows in the city of Groningen, and we exhibited some posters from Laurin Weyers that were behind people's windows. So in a way, we took the art outside, and it was an exhibition that was available 24/7, because people walking their dog at 3 in the morning could be exposed to this. So we brought this to the people, and then yeah, we worked with all kind of people, because what we needed were specific kind of windows. So in the end, like we kind of, instead of choosing the people we wanted to work with, oh, we're thinking of certain qualities, we just looked for windows. So then we ended up working
So
with
you ring like a doorbells
yeah,
too?
yeah. So we this was in September, so we spent the whole summer looking for windows and people that would. We were just two people ringing your door and saying, "Hey, we're doing this project. Would you like to lend your window to us for a month?" And a lot of people were enthusiastic. So, and that was really, really amazing, really inspiring, and that was really a success personally, I would say. And third, I had to think of Teaching Xie, that is a performance artist, and I was talking with another teacher or ex-teacher, now a friend, Ali van Altena, and he asked me like, "Oh, if you would like to talk with an artist before they are dead, who would you like to talk to?" And then I thought, oh, maybe Teaching Xie is this artist that made a 1 year performances. And then I went home and I looked in his website, and his email is on his website. So I just sent him a mail like, "Hey, I love your work. I'm really, really admire you." And at the time I was also teaching in Minerva. So I thought, and I feel his work is not so popular as in like, okay, Marina Abramovic, everyone knows who she is, like in performance, but he is not so in mainstream in that sense. It doesn't have to, but he's so valuable. So I told him, would you be up for doing like an online talk about your work for students to get to know you? And he replied yes, and then we did it. So, and these kind of things, like just daring to ask and to do, and most of the times are good, positive. So yeah, that's definitely it.
Yeah, I think this is also definitely thing that I admire about you, that you really can like move the mountains, and that you really can like connect people in a like so magical way. And I think but we talked about like your artistic successes, but I would also like to ask about the moments that you felt like artistic failures, because I feel sometimes maybe we don't have enough space to fail or something, or how, what is your relationship with failure? Or also like failure could also be something that maybe was really shiny and looked successful, but maybe it was like more like personal failure or something.
Yeah, with failures, I really try to, I quite also sometimes over
Overthinking.
evaluate or overthink them. But I also try to take them as learning moments. So not only get stuck with like, oh, it was a failure or it didn't go as expected, because there are a lot of these expectations, I guess, and miscommunication. I guess a quite big failure, which I hoped it for it to be a different situation, was that I had a very good friend who is an art historian and curator, and she was starting this project, and she wanted to create like exhibitions, solo exhibitions with artists in different locations of the world, and they started doing this in Madrid. So she asked me, well, I would love to make an exhibition with you and for you to have your first solo exhibition in Madrid. So yeah, imagine, everything sounds really magical and
Yeah.
special. Then we even had the opportunity to apply for funding from Groningen. So after that, we would bring it to Groningen. Um, but yeah, something went wrong in a sense that the way they approached art and how they handled art or uh, communicate about the event, it's completely not how I'm used to. And there I organized, or my idea was to organize a dinner with rice. So it was all around rice, so people could count rice and fill a form about their experiences with rice, and then have a dinner with different components. And yeah, like I'm usually, for me, a good event is where people come and experience it, and it's not really about, oh, what kind of people come, but that people come and experience it. Like I put a lot of effort on creating this situation, so if then 2 people come or 5 people, then I feel it's a bit of a shame, because there could have been more people experiencing it. I mean, of course, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality, but I feel a bit of a shame when that happens. So they kept it very, the communication and everything, they kept it very exclusive. And they were saying, oh, no, don't worry, we are in contact with the curator of this and this place, and they're going to come. And I'm like, I don't care what kind of curator comes, just promote it so people know that, so they come. And in the end, well, some people came, most of them were their friends. And yeah, I felt it was, it could have been different, done differently, but I also had to adapt to their way of dealing. I mean, so it was a way.
Yeah.
but it was bad for me. But I think they also really didn't have a good time working with me either. Like they would rather have someone selling work and being successful with that. So.
Yeah, I think maybe like as an artist, it's also so much about kind of like finding your like own like space or your
Mm-hmm.
own like art world inside of art world, because there is like so many different kinds of like approaches. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe sometimes you go on a situation and you feel like, oh, I don't fit in, my work doesn't fit here, but then this pushes you forward to find a place that you fit in.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think that is also something about like an art school, that art school kind of maybe sometimes like focuses only like one kind of art, but
Mm.
it could
Mm.
sometimes be, or like there is some kind of styles or topics or that are more popular. But I
Mm.
think in reality like there is space for like every kind of art, like each kind of art like has its space, like place for it, but you just have to find your place as artist, I think.
Yeah, and maybe that's something that uh, that is a very valuable learning from art school. Indeed, there is not one way of being an artist, and there is no one art world. That can also be very challenging and difficult uh, to realize that and to actually work towards that. Like, okay, what kind of artist do I want to be, and do I feel comfortable with,
Mm.
and what kind of environments fit my work, and I feel comfortable, and in what kind of places I it's not where I want or belong. And sometimes I feel, yeah, sometimes maybe we want to belong, but we don't belong.
Mm.
And it's also about this acceptance and about this. I feel things work and feel better when we accept that, well, I'm interested in this, but actually it's not really my thing. Or,
Mm.
yeah, they're not working with the same ideas or values that I'm doing. So why do I want to be there? Like,
Mm.
so it's all a very big learning. And I was also thinking, you mentioned before a bit about this competitive
Mm.
quality from art school, or that art school can have. Uh, yeah, and but in the end, it's up to each of us. How do we deal with it? And we don't have to be like that. We don't
Mm.
have to be part of this game of competitiveness.
Yeah,
So yeah,
you really have to have like a courage to like refuse or like really
absolutely.
like find your own way in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And last year I was like in a talk with some artists, and we were a bit talking about the struggles of like sustaining yourself as an artist,
Mm.
no? And like, okay, maybe you can make it being like 100% full-time artist, but there was this girl that she was saying like, look, I kind of fed up of having to constantly be writing applications, having to constantly be
Mm.
chasing money. Like, so now I have a part-time job, pays for my bills, and the rest of the time I have free time and free headspace to be in my studio to do whatever I want.
Mm.
So like that inspired me very much. Not that I per se follow that idea, but like to gave me this like sparkle of light that like, okay, at this moment I'm choosing to do this, but it doesn't
Mm.
have to be forever, and there are many possibilities. So
Yeah.
I think it is quite smart in a good way to find your way, and what kind of artist you want to be, but also how do you want to sustain your practice in that sense.
Mm. No, yeah, I definitely agree that yeah, like as an artist there is like really like it's not about like making one good work, it's really
Mm.
kind of sustaining yourself and like finding your way. I also sometimes think that like when you first go like art school, like you experiment a lot, you do like this and that and this, and then I think at some moment there is like this magical moment that everything that you have ever done like falls its place, and like kind of you like understand what your like art is about, or what is your this inner logic and inner language. Like have
Mm.
you experienced this like moment that like you make this one artwork and then you feel like, oh, everything that I have ever done like falls like into place?
Yes, I think so. And I think it was at the end of my first year when
Mm-hmm.
I started working with people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an assignment based on an assignment given by Sariana. And Sariana is still very special person to me because I still have a lot of her advice present in my everyday. But this was like an assignment that said something like, or told, invited us to create a new project in the last kind of 8 weeks of semester or something. Do whatever we wanted. If we had an idea that we never realized it, to do it. Or and then I was at the same time following a painting course, and then I remember one Friday morning, really alone in the studio, I was painting, and then I was having a break, and I started like having like touching my skin and my face, and then I realized, coming from Argentina, how little touch there is in general in Europe. So then I started thinking like, oh, could I start asking people to create a bit this research, like, oh, how do you feel about this, but also like embodied it. So I started asking people and filming it to touch their faces and to like, are there different textures or places that hurt or that gives you pleasure, and then I started doing this, and then I started doing it with 2 people and 3 people, so I would interlace them. And then I started doing it with like a bunch of people, like 30 people. And I think that was really something that I was like, okay, it is about working with people, it is about connection, it is about togetherness, it is about sharing experiences, and yeah, what you experience, that is your ultimate truth at that moment, and no one can uh, fight you that. And also this role of facilitator, like me in that case as an artist, I was nothing more than just inviting you to experience something, and that's it. And yeah, not really this brilliant idea is touching each other and shit. Well, that sounds very bad, but like experiencing something, sharing it with each other, and hopefully the day after, or when you meet with your boyfriend the next day, then you're like, oh, you know what, like I did this very weird thing, I was touching someone's hair, and but like that it stays with you, and that then you can think like, oh, but actually I never touched someone's hair, and it felt really good. Like these kind of realizations that expand your self as a human.
Yeah, it's really about like the intentionality and like being in a moment, because sometimes maybe we feel really like rushed and forget to even be a moment, and it's like acknowledging this being a moment. And I think you have like many works that are like bit like ritualistic or something, or like, I don't know, you had like a project that you something to bury, that you had buried like some fears on the ground, or
uh, um, that is uh, yes, it's a work or like an action I made in 2017, I think, where I was having a lot of struggle to close up a relationship, and with someone that has been very dear and important to me. So I was in a retreat, in a kind of short residency in the countryside in Argentina, and I decided like, okay, I'm gonna write everything I need to tell this person, and I'm gonna make a hole and I'm gonna bury it, and that's gonna be it. It's a bit like this action of closure. And I did it. Like I just grabbed a shovel. I never did a hole, but I just like did it. Like I don't know. Like probably there are many ways more effective to do a hole, but I did it. And also I feel this experience, this bodily experiences, has very different impact than just like observing or not getting involved. And then I wrote this letter and I buried it, and that was the end of my suffering. And actually 2 weeks ago, where I was in this retreat in Sweden, I did it for the second time.
oh. And what was the things that you then let go of, or is it a
Another
secret?
relationship.
Oh.
I was also having a lot of memories and yeah, memories and a lot of pain from another relationship, and then I thought, oh wow, then it's I can try to do it again.
And yeah, you also gave this experience to other people, because you also had like a group uh, performance. But I think also it's a good jump about I wanted to also talk about like art and the suffering, and you like somehow went to like to the suffering topic, so it's a nice bridge to this topic. But
Yeah.
I think or like this is something that I feel personally very conflicted about. Like I feel oftentimes art is about suffering, but it shouldn't be about suffering, because I think art is oftentimes like rooted in some kind of like, or not like suffering in a very like literal sense, but suffering in a way that, oh, like I am upset about something, or like I want to change something, or maybe for you it could be that you don't feel that there is enough meaningful connection in a world, and that's why you create what you create. And in a way, like I feel that art is in a way like about suffering or something, or like, but I think also in some cases like art could also like heal the world. So there is really this paradoxical feeling about like suffering and healing in art, or like how do you relate to that? Do you need to like suffer to make art?
No, definitely not. I mean, it could be something that to deal with the suffering, but I would not say per se that that's something that characterizes my practice. But when I was hearing you, I think it's very interesting what you say, because I never really thought of it that like that. But I do think that, or the way I see it, is that art is about life and it's about being a human, and then suffering, it is intrinsic part of being a human, and like that, like not suffering like, oh, blood and shed and tears, but like suffering that you're growing and you don't understand your emotions or your hormones or weather. And there are many levels of suffering.
Yeah.
And then it makes sense to me that art has this part in it, because it is about being a human in the world. So some days you wake up not so good and there's no explanation, and then it is then about how you deal with that. So I think the interesting part for me is also the awareness. So to create these moments of awareness through art. So, okay, like, yeah, there is an acknowledgement that we are living in times where we are all busy, we don't have time, la 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 la, expectations, blah blah blah. But then, okay, what can I create with my work that it kind of creates, for example, a moment of decompressing, or a moment for breathing, or a moment for reflection? And then that's why I also very much like the idea of an invitation, because this is something I thought of will be interesting for someone to experience, but okay, we're all different and we might not all see the value on that. Absolutely fine, let's have different points of view, or even let's talk about it. But by creating these situations and invitations, then it's a moment for people to think, oh, actually I thought I didn't have time, but I just spent 5 minutes sitting here and drinking a tea, so I actually have time. But it's about making time. So I don't know,
Yeah.
like, so to me it makes sense that it is about that the suffering is inherent. But I'm also quite positive, or I am a positive person, so I also try to, like, okay, the suffering also brings growth. And again, like with these failure situations, so to not get stuck in these kind of terms that also we are in general referring them as negative, like, oh, I failed, this terrible. Well, okay, what can I do with that? Like, what can I do with this suffering? And it works very well to dig a hole in the ground and bury it.
Yeah.
So
And like maybe we slowly start closing up the interview, and I would also like to ask like what is the projects that you are busy now with, and like what is the your next like steps and plans, or what you would like to bring attention
um, well, a very special and exciting project at the moment is, I've been working with food and creating dinners, collective dinners, exploring different ways of making food. I am currently also studying Ayurveda,
to.
which has also brought a lot of inspiration to me, and the ways we relate to food, and what kind of food gives us energy, what kind of food slows us down, brings us calm down in our mental space. Um, and I've been wanting, kind of throughout the last half a year, create some sort of working group in which we create actions with food and discuss about food, we learn about food. And it now became very clear the format of this, and it's called it's a new platform that is called Eatable Actions Together, so EAT. And we actually just had our first encounter last week, Wednesday, and it was really nice and inspiring and delicious. And well, it's a space for people to meet who have somehow related relation to food in their practice, or they are interested in food, or they are cooking, or they are exploring food and sustainability, environmentalism, I don't know, like anything.
Yeah.
And we have this kind of schedule that in 2 weeks we're going to meet again, and we're going to plan an action, and in 2 weeks time after that we're going to make an action. So it is something about making together, sharing experiences, learning about food and resources, and collaborating. And there is also this, I want to create also this online space, because this would be very much Groningen based. So I made this website where people from around the world who are also working with food can create a bit like a profile. So for example, if we are wanting to collaborate somehow online, or to be there or receive them, we can do that, and figure out or experience other people's ways of working. And also, and part of this would be to create publications, so to kind of document the process and the sources and traces that all of these projects have. So this is something quite big, but also that it somehow came to me very clear in the last 3 weeks, and that is kind of really, really sprouting. But it's like bamboo. I think it takes 11 years for the bamboo to actually sprout. This took me some months, but it's now sprouting.
Yeah, it really sounds really beautiful idea, and I'm really looking forward to see what comes out of it. And I think it's also like connects all of your interest in art together, because like food and this intentionality, and also like this performative aspect, and making connections with other people, and building communities, but also like in a way, wait, I had one more point. Like also that you do like a little booklets of it, because like also writing, I think, is also a really big part of your work. So it really brings all the puzzle pieces together, and I am really excited for this project. Thank you so much for being my first person that I interviewed, and
Thank you for your questions and for your attention.
thank you. Thank you for watching Cecilia Fox Art TV. Please subscribe to the channel to not miss out the upcoming episodes. And to learn more about the work of Lola Diaz Cantoni, check the description box down below.